Lucifer, son of the morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. I'm gonna put on an iron shirt and chase Satan out of earth.
Hello everyone, this is Angela and welcome to my channel, Angie the ENTJ. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and to click on the notifications bell so that you'll know whenever I upload any new content. This video is going to cover an article that was printed yesterday by the Guardian newspaper over in the UK, and it is titled, quote, "Welcome to the Femosphere, the latest dark toxic corner of the internet, ... for women." See, let me say this before I start reading and giving more commentary. Listen, the birth rates have declined. Major businesses that were considered retail anchors, such as Big Lots and Party City, are shutting down here in the U.S., and marriage rates are stagnant as well. Additionally, religions are just not religioning anymore. In other words, less people are participating in organized religions, especially women, because to be a part of most organized religions, women have to give their full effort within their respective community in terms of unpaid labor, volunteer labor, as well as living as a second-class citizen in practice, which can be seen in the form of them having to turn a blind eye to their male counterparts' indiscretions. And there are plenty of stories about that. As well, women have to participate in a combination of an informal kleptocracy, which is basically when a ruling body steals resources to use for their own selfish gains, the same resources that should be used to help the greater good, they take it for themselves. And then the other side of that combination is an informal kakistocracy, which is what happens when incompetent people rule. An example of this would be like an uneducated man who is a middle school dropout wanting to marry a woman who worked hard to get her master's degree along with the income to match. And he feels that he's entitled to it all because he would be the man of the house, the leader, the ruler, whatever. So, yeah.
All right, fellas, let's talk about dating educated women. Research shows that most men actually like smart women, intelligent women, women who can think for themselves. But there's some things that you need to get used to if you're going to date smart women. Smart women often make more money than most men. Smart women often have more education. They also have higher standards. The one thing you just have to realize is you're a man. You're a masculine guy, which means you have the ability to still lead an educated. You don't have to make as much money as she does. Just have something going on for yourself. Have something you're passionate about. Have something that you want to do. Have your own set of beliefs, being secure in who you are. You don't have to compete with her, and most women don't want you to compete with them. Most want you to just lead them. Hit follow for more.
Kakistocracy. That's what that is. So now that the world has awakened to the scam of patriarchy, thanks to a bit of economic insight,
Did I do that?
now it is time for those who betted on robbing another generation of their time, opportunities, and resources. Those very people, it's time for them to endure the very situation that they were attempting to launch the rest of us into. And instead of standing 10 toes down on their principles and going down with the ship that they blasted a hole into themselves, the patriarchy is attempting to flip it around by maligning women who have sworn off men as terrorists. I knew that this day would come, and I'm ready for it, and I want to make sure that all of you are equipped as well. I will add that now more than ever is the time where if you see anyone's content, where if you use anyone's content to develop your own content, you need to give credit. You need to state, this is where I got it from. You need to contribute to a chain of continuity for this information. I knew that they would pull this move, which is why I have been on here for the past 3 years creating content that contains all of the references, for the most part, from where the information was sourced. See, what happens is that they will start taking down scholarly articles and rewording stuff to make us look like we just made up what we've been saying all along out of thin air. And I will plug in, that's why the phrase stay woke initially came into being way back in the day, because the patriarchy's use of subterfuge, or their use of deceit to the detriment of others for the sake of their own gains. Now, moving along, I have additionally performed economic analysis on the very issues that have been discussed, just so they can't dismiss it as an opinion or claim that it is misinformation, because the numbers are and have always been involved, and I painstakingly made sure to tie practically everything to empirical data that can be found within scholarly articles, scholarly journals, accredited media outlets, and other forms of data that has been thoroughly researched. The patriarchy is scrambling globally, and they do not know what to do. They are desperate to hold on to power. So you need to give credit in order to strengthen your own credibility in the event you've been accused of providing misinformation or worse. And for those of you who are content creators, if you have not done it already, I strongly urge that you get an external hard drive and start downloading your videos onto it just in case. It's not enough to put it up into the cloud. You need to get an external hard drive and download your ish just in case. Now, this article that is describing the Femosphere is dangerous on multiple levels, because through the use of the name Femosphere, it gives the false impression that this is the female version of the Manosphere, and nothing can be further from the truth. First off, there are more men on the planet than there are women, so there's no way to make an equivalent by numbers alone. Moreover, women who just want to be left alone to live their lives in peace are not equivalent to people in the manosphere who are seeking marriage with a woman who they want to dominate over her in order to access her resources, in order to have her perform unpaid care work, that unpaid labor, and to provide surrogacy to him and the nannying of their children for free. No woman who is single, child free, and enjoying her life traveling the world and engaging into her hobbies has been implicated in a mass pum, okay, using a GUN. All right. However, the manosphere has actual blood on its hands. The patriarchy is making this false equivalency because they are afraid of the moment when their followers, who follow them like a little puppy dog, following everybody around, okay, like a little puppy dog, they're afraid of what happens when their followers will also open their eyes to what we have been saying all along and turn against them. So articles like this, from my perspective, are simply working to stave off the impending doom that is facing the patriarchy from within their own ranks. We have already seen the tip of the iceberg when the incident of Luigi Mangione, United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Okay? And MAGA is in the middle of their own version of a civil war where their tech bros have turned on them, on the ultra conservatives, even going so far as to calling them the R word, meaning that they are not smart. I won't say that word on here. So, conveniently enters this diversion where women are once again made out to be the incorrect target. And they are doing this globally, by the way. It is out of desperation. So now I'm going to read the article and give my commentary as I go along. So let's begin. Okay, this is from The Guardian and it's titled Welcome to the Femosphere, the latest dark toxic corner of the internet. For women. And it was written by Rachel Healy, and this was a day ago. So today is December the 30th, so it was written on the 29th. And this is a picture of who they're saying is a dark feminine influencer, the wizard Liz, and the photograph came from her Instagram. So let me begin. It says the Manosphere, the misogynist internet world populated by influencers such as Andrew Tate, is widely recognized as a toxic space where young men are at risk of radicalization. Now, say researchers, women and girls are being sucked into potentially dangerous online spaces of their own, the Femosphere. I vehemently disagree with that. It is a term used by Dr. Jilly Kay, an expert in feminist media and cultural studies at Loughborough University, in a paper published earlier this year. Kay has been researching a reactionary turn among young women and how a backlash against mainstream feminism has created new spaces online. In the Femosphere, instead of, quote, incels, male involuntary celibates, there are, quote, femcells. And instead of pickup artists, there are female dating strategists and so called, quote, dark feminine influencers who encourage women to find men to support them financially. Well, if that is the case, then prior to World War II, all of the women during those times, especially here in the United States, should be considered dark feminine influencers. All of our great, 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 great grandmothers should have been dark feminine influencers because that was the patriarchal norm where women had to go and find a man who could support them and a family in order to marry so that they wouldn't be in poverty because they didn't have rights to go to work, they didn't have rights to their own autonomy. So let me move along. Most corners of the Femisphere explicitly describes themselves as feminist. So Kay said she was surprised to see their values seemed conservative and their philosophy mostly anti-gender equality. That's why I've been saying all along people need to credit whoever they get their information from. It's not about stroking ego here. It's because you got some folks that will take a little bit of something and then they will run roughshod with it. And now you got these people that are looking at the roughshod version of what's been going on and claiming that it is the norm when that's not the case. So when you're giving credit, it gives credibility. Okay. She said, let me continue. She said, the logic that they adhere to is that men and women are fundamentally different. We are a dimorphic species, meaning that we have different body types. We have different ways that our bodies operate because we have different organs from each other. What do you mean, when you say we're fundamentally different? That's been scientifically proven, you know. In the Femisphere, as in the Manosphere, I think this is a false equivalency here. There's an overarching belief that life is about survival of the fittest, that men will always hurt women, and that will never change, so strategies are needed to conquer the opposite gender. I think it is very unfair to make an equivalency here, considering, especially here in the United States, according to the Department of Justice, their own information that has been compiled, that when you look at who is committing 70% or more of crime in general, especially violent crime, it is overwhelmingly men. Now, does that mean that every single man on the planet walking around is bad? I've always disagreed with that. I do understand where people are coming from when they feel that way, especially if they are surviving the harm that has been caused to them by what men have done. I get it. But I don't think it's fair to make an equivalency for a woman in the so called Femosphere to say that her strategy for survival to keep from being harmed is the same as the person who's more than likely, according to the numbers, going to harm her. You know, the main threat to a pregnant woman, never mind the miscarriage if she has one, it could potentially be her own spouse, fiance, boyfriend, the baby daddy. That's who's the primary threat to a pregnant woman. The man who got her pregnant. So it is unfair to make this equivalency. Okay, so let me continue. Kay looked at female dating strategy, which started as a Reddit forum with more than 250,000 members and expanded into social media and a podcast. It has a 6-point ideology for members to subscribe to, which includes ideas such as men should always pursue women, women should seek financial contributions from men, and the majority of men have no value. But my thing is this: I believe men should always pursue women. I do. Because usually when it doesn't work out that way, the relationship doesn't last. And not only do I believe that, so has many ancient cultures prior to our own right now. They've had the same sentiment. Things tend to work out better when the guy is pursuing the woman versus the other way around. This one, women should seek financial contributions from men. Well, okay, in the majority of countries, men are the ones that are making the laws, including the United States. So not only are women contributing their unpaid labor, they are not getting any social benefits as a result of it. So, yes, they're going to have to seek financial contributions from the men who want them to be their wives and want them to be the mothers of their children, because the government will take the taxes from their income and not provide any benefits to the people, but instead will provide benefits to businesses, which predominantly are ran by men too. So what do you expect when they say women seek financial contributions from men? Why shouldn't she? Why shouldn't she? And then it says, and the majority of men have no value. Now, I personally don't believe that, but I understand the trauma that has brought this 250,000 people into that space to believe that. There are people that are walking around that have had stitches, they have had teeth knocked out, they have had broken bones multiple times from their fathers on to people that they got into relationships with. So if you had to be someone that had to recover from a major injury where you've been hospitalized, maybe you will eventually come to believe that. I don't personally believe that, but I understand where it is coming from. So I think it is unfair to say that these women are the equivalent of the men who are perpetuating this. So it says, let me continue. Mainstream feminism in recent decades has been very consumer oriented, all about individual empowerment, emphasizing things like women being confident, successful, and women having all things that men can have, said Kay. In other words, girl boss feminism. Now, let me back that up. What's wrong with being able to have what you want and being able to afford to get it? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with being empowered as an individual? What are you expecting for these women to be weak, independent? What's wrong with a woman being confident and successful and having all the things that she wants to have, even if it just so happens to be something that men also have? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? I don't agree with it being girl boss feminism. If you want to call it that, fine. I just think it's just an adult being an adult. And when women are adulting, well, we tend to like being able to get from point A to point B with ease. So we'll want to get a car. We tend to like living in a comfortable space, so we'll buy a house. I don't think that's girl boss feminism. I just sincerely think it's just a woman being a woman or an adult being an adult. So let me continue to move through this article. It says, but about 2018, Kay said there's been a growing rejection of that idea. They're talking about the girl boss feminism theme. Kay saw beliefs discussed and shared in online forums and via social media influences that echoed the logic of the manosphere, particularly when it came to dating and relationships. Quote, ideas like men are the gatekeeper of the relationship. So what she's saying is what's been going on all around. Men are the gatekeeper of the relationships and women are the gatekeepers of sex, she said. Well, when it comes to the majority of encounters that will lead to sex, either via casual or via, leading up to marriage, generally it is the men who are asking the women out. So the men already know what their plans are with the woman that they're pursuing. So they need to be accountable, for instance, for children being born out of wedlock. He knew that all he wanted to do was dump into her, although he may have told her differently. So what they are saying is a survival tactic. Hey, this guy may tell you whatever you want to hear. But at the end of the day, don't give anything to him unless you receive something from him. Fair is fair. And then she also added, in quote, so women's currency in the SE-actual marketplace resides in her withholding SEX from men, and you diminish your value if you have casual SEX. Okay, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Because you can't go on and on for centuries calling women SLUTSs and garden tools for having casual encounters with men while upholding those who wait until marriage as being the ideal. So now that the women are behaving in a way that's ideal, it's a problem. They're part of the Femosphere. No, that's not right. Let me continue. Or the idea to counter women's lesser earning power. For instance, the gender pay gap. This is written in the UK. So it says the gender pay gap in the UK was 14.3% last year. It's, I think, higher than that here in the US. Rather than fighting for pay equality, a man should provide for a woman financially, and women must embrace feminine energy, in quotes, to secure a husband. She is saying this is Femosphere, logic. Well, women have been fighting for pay equality. Women have been fighting for social benefits that are paid for by our tax dollars. So if that's not going to give, if there's going to be resistance towards doing what is fair and equitable, what else do you expect for the women to do? So Kay said it's incredibly conservative, but it's trying to reframe it as being this empowering strategy. I think it's more along the lines of if you can't beat them, join them. Right? So why is this being framed as Femosphere? Kay also looked at the quote dark feminine influencers such as Kanika Batra and the Wizard Liz. In recent years, Batra, and that's spelled B-A-T like Tom, R-A, B like boy, A-T like Tom, R-A, has criticized liberal feminism. In one post, she explained why she had, quote, left feminism behind, end quote, and said, quote, the manosphere is incredibly loyal to everybody within it. In another, Batra laments the state of modern dating and the ways it has changed men and women's roles. Quote, I used to be a feminist before I saw the effects of third wave feminism, Batra said. This has forced women into masculine roles where they are pursuing men, end quote. Batra added, quote, this is not natural and it seems that there are more and more people not starting a family, end quote. Going on to the wizard Liz, meanwhile, makes videos with titles such as, quote, how to become more beautiful, how to become rich, how to become extremely seductive. On the princess treatment, the influencers advise followers who want to be quote unquote spoiled to say to their male partner, I would appreciate it if you give me some money like an allowance. I don't agree with it. By that, I mean, I don't agree with this concept of a man giving a woman an allowance. It just kind of gives me like daddy daughter vibes and it gives me the ick. I think that money issues should be handled in a more mature fashion within the context of an intimate relationship. But I do like the fact that women are bringing up the economic angle of things. So since they don't want to do things like run the nation as if it's on a Nordic model, and I do recognize that this information is coming out of the UK, but it applies to the US as well. See, we need more social benefits over here, but they don't want to give it because they say that it's communism and socialism. No, it's not. We don't want the state to own the corporations. We don't want a situation where a person can work and work and work and never get ahead. We're already there, but we don't want it. So, but no, having taxpayer paid benefits is not socialism or communism. It's more economies of scale. So she goes on to say, there are clear reasons why women and girls might be drawn into this thinking, said feminist theorist Dr. Sophie Lewis, whose upcoming book, Enemy Feminisms, will explore moments in history where feminists have aligned with unlikely groups such as colonial regimes and even the KKK. Of the Femosphere's ideas, she said, quote, there's an actual offer, an actual promise that should not be sniffed at. There's a promise to deliver a woman from what political economists have called the double shift. After liberal feminism's visions that women could have it all, now, quote, women are saddled down with both productive and reproductive labor, she said, which can be resolved by having social benefits. But they won't give the social benefits that primarily left leaning, quote unquote, liberal, primarily women have been voting for, as well as the men that support it as well. They fight against it. And then they're calling it, a type of terror or is because women are now saying, okay, the guy has to pay out of pocket. Either way, somebody has to pay. So Lewis has studied some areas of the Femosphere, particularly Tradwife influencers. The so-called Tradwife life is genuinely seductive to women who hate the endless grind, quote, she said. That's something that liberal feminism needs to recognize and hasn't provided a solution to. The solution is the Nordic model. But they want to live this fantasy at everybody else's expense. That's what's really going on. Let me continue. She said she is discouraged by the lack of hope and anti-utopian thinking in these spaces, with ideas about new ways of living often disparaged as foolish. Quote, the Femisphere promises liberation from the double shift, where liberal feminism has saddled women with both productive and unproductive labor. Okay, so that's here in the center of this article. Kay and Lewis are not the only ones interested in this growing corner of the internet. Professor Emiliano de Cristofaro and Professor Jeremy Blackburn are two of the authors of a data-driven analysis of, quote, toxic women's communities online. No, this is not an equivalent. These are women who just want to be left alone, or they want to be in a situation where they know they'll be okay. They're not going out here with a pew pew and just randomly, taking people out because they didn't get their way. So there's a false equivalency there. They had already worked on the Manosphere and other dark corners of the internet. They noted some of the same patterns as Kay and found, quote, sort of analogs of the Manosphere. Some communities even mirrored the Manosphere in the advice given to members, Quote, the narratives with respect to dating strategy are similar. It's a game and you try to outsmart the other gender and win, said Cristofaro. That's because some of these people who are pretending to be on women's side came in late. I've been making videos for 3 years, yes, but I've been in this space way longer than that. I was here when people who don't get enough credit had been here all the while building up momentum into we need to make a change for the better for everyone. But it's going to have to start with the women. Starting with the women acknowledging you don't have to put up with this garbage. It is okay for you to do better. We need to create support. So let me continue. Some of the language being used is similar. Being red pilled is often discussed in the Manosphere. The idea, based on the plot of the Matrix film, of suddenly being able to see reality. And being black pilled is used by incels to describe the idea that their situation, being as they believe undesirable to women, is inescapable. In the Femosphere, these have been reframed as the pink pill. Now, this is the boldest lie that I have ever seen before in my life. I am going to send this to Crystalline Carrison, author of the pink pill, so that she can see this and hopefully deal with it, because the pink pill has been co-opted. When Crystalline Carrison first came out, the goal was in particular to help women do better for themselves and have a better life and to provide support. It was not at all about being toxic towards other people. It was about acknowledging, hey, I don't have to participate in that. I can do better for myself and moving forward. This is how it happens, you all. And this right here is why I said too often that you need to give credit if you borrow somebody's information so that it cannot be repurposed into something that it was never intended to be. Let me continue. Accusations of toxic language and hate speech have led to some female groups, including femcel groups, being banned from Reddit. Just like the Manosphere groups before them, they then set up independent platforms of their own. Again, calling them the Femosphere and making it an equivalent to the Manosphere. The Manosphere actually has blood on their hands. These women collectively do not. So I'm not saying that there may or may not be an issue. I'm saying that it's wrong to make an equivalency like this. Let me continue. Quote, usually that community reduces in size, but becomes more radicalized and more toxic because of a lack of moderation and less exposure to moderate positions, said De Cristofaro. The researchers noted that among the Femosphere numbers, feminism, or quote, feminism is a key part of their identity, end quote. But as Kay noted, this doesn't necessarily mean they hold progressive views. Some more traditionally feminist groups have aligned with non-feminist groups who share some of the same views, most notably the union of Christian fundamentalists and far-right figures with some gender-critical feminists. This is something we've seen throughout the history of feminism, said Lewis. Quote, you almost call this anti-feminist feminism. That's what I see in the Femosphere a lot, she said. It's important to understand a long lineage of women, especially middle-class white women, making a calculation that they might be able to individually find a foothold within the patriarchy by accommodating themselves to a certain set of disciplines in exchange for provisional protection while throwing other women under the bus. End quote. Sees parallels with Naomi Klein's work on the digital world, where she identified that many of these new communities contain a mix of ideas from both the left and the right of the political spectrum. That is because you got people. See, this is what's happening. You have people like myself who have been around, and there are quite a few who've been around way longer than me and we're doing way more than I have, prior to my 3 years of creating content here on social media. But I'm also someone who's been around for more than 25 years in this kind of a space. So I've seen some stuff go down. That's why I was able to tell you step by step what's about to happen, because I've already seen it happen before. Okay. So what's happening when they say that these new communities contain a mix of ideas from both the left and the right political spectrum, there were people who were in this space and they were the driving force before these people who used to be on the opposite side of things not only came into the space, but they invaded and they took it over. That's why they put it in this article that the pink pill is something completely different than what it originally was for. And like I said, I'm going to reach out to Crystal and Carrison. I don't know if she's aware of this, but I'm going to make her aware of it. And she can do with it whatever she wants to do with it. But I know for a fact that when it comes to the quote unquote pink pill, she owns that. Okay, they co-opted it. And Crystal and Carrison, there were so many people, but I'm not gonna name them because of this article. I don't want to drive unfavorable traffic to the other people that I can name. That's why I'm not gonna name them in this video. Okay. It says, quote, in this case, certain ideas from left feminism seem to get mixed up with reactionary conservative ideas, end quote. Case said, that's because you got right-leaning extremists who realized that the bottom was about to fall out, and they got the heck up out of that space, and they came right over here and they started messing it up over here. That's why. Kay said, quote, it's part of broader reactionary politics, the role that digital culture is playing in rearranging traditional coordinates of left and right, end quote. This aligns with other research, such as that of Dr. Alice Evans, a senior lecturer at King's College in London, who showed earlier that this year that Gen Z is extremely progressive on some issues and extremely conservative on others, with a gulf particularly forming between young men and young women. There is no evidence to say that the Femosphere is radicalizing its members in the same way as the Manosphere, which has seen members committing shocking acts of real-world violence and fueling populist political movements. Thank you. Thank you. That's why I say they shouldn't have even called it the Femosphere or whatever they wanted to call it. For that reason, this started off as women who have been harmed, wanting to do better for themselves or wanting to avoid harm because they've seen what happened to others. So, like they said, and like I've said all along, the Manosphere has blood on their hands. So let me continue. It says, but there are reasons to be wary. De Cristofaro said, more research is needed. You all sure do need to do more research. But, quote, exposure to toxic content has been shown overall to increase radicalization, end quote. Kay said, quote, it's important that people understand it and recognize it, partly because at first glance, it can seem appealing, especially to feminists, end quote. And the article ends by saying, quote, liberal feminism has been rejected for a good reason. It has failed to deliver gender equality, so it makes sense that you'd want to find an alternative. But just because something is the enemy of liberal feminism does not mean that it's good for women, end quote. Okay, that is the end of the article, and what is going on is that the patriarchy confused force with power. Civilizations called the aspect of nature that is proactive, that involves movement, and that requires force and a lot of effort, they labeled that as masculine. The masculine aspect of nature is in plain sight, like the sun and its sunshine and the heat from it, right? However, there is a hidden aspect of nature as well. It is often inert. It's that potential energy. It is often hidden in plain sight, like the moon is for a few days from the vantage point of the earth. Or it can be something that you really don't think of as much, but is just as integral as the masculine aspect of nature. It's like the grass is on the ground. People underestimate the grass. People will walk over the grass to go smell a flower. But without the grass, that can disrupt a lot of things because a lot of animals depend on that grass for food. So if they don't have food, human beings don't have food either. You see, that is the feminine side of nature. See, it's difficult to see the stars and the different galaxies from the Earth while the sun is shining bright in the daytime. However, just because you can't see them in the daytime does not mean they are not there. This is the challenge that the patriarchy faces because the only tool they have in their box is brute force, which, when used, only causes a further imbalance to the equilibrium of the situation they are attempting to conquer, or what they erroneously refer to as leadership. So here we are with a planet that is on the verge of collapse, at least for human occupation, because of one imbalance after the other, after the other, after the other, as perpetrated by the various different patriarchies over thousands upon thousands of years. And here we are, a day away from 2025, and the patriarchy has reached its single point of failure, which, from an engineering aspect, a single point of failure is the point where the entire system breaks down. And this single point of failure is the physical and economic reality involving the fact that there will not be enough girls and women on the planet for every man who they, the patriarchy that is, promised. They promised all of these boys and men through their brainwashing that they could use and abuse us girls and women for their own version of a better life. They're at this single point of failure, and there is no way to mitigate it. There are no backup factories for creating adult women who are ready to cook and clean and breed, and to also be their involuntary cuck queen. Yeah. You see, they have run out of women, and not enough girls and women are here right now to produce more girls and women in enough time to stave off the socio-economic consequences they are going to face. That's what happens when domestic violence, misogyny, and oppression are used in the place of equality, equity, and opportunities. So that's all that I have to say for now. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notifications bell so that you'll know whenever I upload any new content. Take care until next time.